Good afternoon and welcome to Money Tips. Hope you're all having a great day. It's a beautiful sunny day here in London, where I think it's in the mid-20s. So a lovely June day, beautiful weather, and I will be going out there very soon after finishing this broadcast. I wanted to tell you about UK property prices in particular, and how they are still rising and just going up literally, to coin an old phrase, through the roof. In the last report, this has come out from the Nationwide, one of the largest lenders in the UK, and they, according to their figures, their sales figures, and they lend to hundreds of thousands of people, prices rose last year by 10.9%, 10.9% to May of last year, and they think the prices are still going to be going up, that there's going to be no slowdown. And this is the highest level of rise since, guess when? 2007, the last peak, the last market peak. This is the highest rise. Now, I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions, but to me, what normally happens when something reaches a peak or reaches a previous peak? Yes, it can go a bit higher, it can reach another peak, as it seems to keep doing, but can that go on forever? Well, it doesn't go on forever, does it? Nothing goes on forever. But look, it's gone up by an enormous amount, and people are still struggling, or scrambling rather, to get properties, even during the pandemic and the worst recession that the UK has ever known. When the economy retracted by nearly 10%, properties were going up by 10%. It doesn't make sense. And the stock market too. Well, there is a reason for it, and one of the reasons that the government is printing so much money and just throwing money around like confetti, that it is affecting asset prices such as property, stocks and shares, which are also reaching new peaks. And so there you go. That's one of the reasons. The other reason is that a lot of people are trying to get out of the cities and thinking, well, they can work from home. Great. So I'll go and live in Devon. I'll go and live in Norfolk. I'll go and live in Wales. And as long as I've got a Wi-Fi connection, which is not always guaranteed, by the way, then I can work from anywhere and work from home and have a big, nice 4-bedroom family home. And that's great. That's fine. But we're not seeing property prices boom everywhere in the UK. Parts of London, for instance, I'm getting calls every day saying that this flat has been reduced, sometimes by 10%. I say from, it went on at 550, now then reduced it to 520, now they'll take 490. It's not the same everywhere, but some parts of the country are just going crazy, as I'll come on to in a minute. And this idea of working from home sounds great, doesn't it? Most people do want to work from home. It's not surprising that people would like to work from home. Why not? You can work, you can look after your kids maybe, you can do your laundry, and while you're on supposedly working, sounds great. However, and we saw that a lot of the Silicon Valley companies, like Twitter, said, don't come back to work, you can stay out as long as you like, and we know that that's true. But Apple today has sent a memo to all its staff saying they want them back in the office by September of this year. So that's an interesting trend. They feel that remote working is fine, but they need that dynamic of people being in the office. So they've realised that it's not the be-all and end-all. It's not the panacea to all their problems. They can't just sell off their office buildings and let everyone work from home. So that's an interesting trend. However, they've said it will only be for 3 days a week. So it's not going to be permanent, but it's a trend back. And that's probably likely to happen. I was listening to an interview last night with Martha Lane Fox, who's the co-founder of lastminute.com. She's also a House of Lords member, so she's Lady Soho, I think, or Baroness Soho, Baroness of Soho, and she does a lot of work for the government. She helped set up the .gov, and she's advised other companies. She's on the board of Twitter, and she is also on the board, I think, of WeTransfer, that very useful method of transferring large files. Try it. WeTransfer is free to use, but you can upgrade if you want. Instead of trying to send files by email, send them by WeTransfer. She's also a chancellor, or something to do with the Open University, and promotes that and says that the Open University, which was well ahead of its time, in the 1960s, set up a university that wasn't based anywhere. It was remote learning, and that's come to its, its time has come. And she said that the Open University offers numerous free courses or very low-cost courses to help people. And she also said, which I've always said as well, is that you should never stop learning. That in your lifetime, somebody entering the workplace now at 21 could have up to 48 different careers. And even people at her age, where she said, I'm 48, but still, she said she's just getting started. She said she could have another 15 careers in her working life. So a very interesting lady, and very, very smart. Does a lot of work for charity. Very humble, very quiet. I expected her to be this big power woman, thrusting and answering questions very forcefully, but she was very humble, very quiet, and sat there in this Zoom meeting with the cat jumping in front of the camera. So that's an interesting trend. Very interesting that she said, I'm 48 and just getting started, which is great, because no matter how old you are, it doesn't mean your life is coming to an end. You have to put the slippers on and put your feet up watching daytime television. You can still achieve things, as she is demonstrating that she is doing. So good on you, Martha Lane Fox. And she also said that the social media companies like Twitter are not too powerful, and that Twitter is very different from, say, a conglomerate like Facebook, which probably has become a little bit too powerful, but we shall see. I mean, life goes on outside of social media. It's not the sum total of our lives. But she was a very interesting. She gave some very interesting comments. Now, getting back to property, Nationwide said that 70% of owners considering moving would still do so, even after the stamp duty holiday ends. This is the stamp duty holiday brought in by Rishi Sunak, the UK Chancellor, which is a big tax that's levied on anyone who wants to buy their own home. So if you go to the States and so I want social housing, they'll give you social housing. But if you try and buy your own house and say, look, I don't need the state, I'm going to row my own boat, then the government taxes you. They put this massive tax, which can be as much as £20,000 to buy an ordinary family home in the southeast. And he offered this holiday to sort of boost the market, and obviously interest rates are low as well. So it's a good time to buy for first-time buyers, and many have. That's why the market has gone crazy. But this comes to an end at the end of this month in June. So a lot of people are expecting that the market will go boom, slow down at the end of the month. But Nationwide doesn't think so, because they did a survey in April and they said that 70% of owners, 7 in 10, would still buy even if they have to pay the extra tax at the end of it. Now, bear in mind that this stamp duty is based on the value of a property. So if you're living in parts of the country, you could buy a property for maybe £50,000 or £60,000 or £100,000 or a couple of £100,000. So the stamp duty is not completely out of buying a property. So a lot of people are not that worried about it. Okay, so these figures are clear that a lot of the lenders and the market thinks that the people in the market, the industry thinks the market will keep surging ahead. But then, you'd expect them to say that in a way. They don't want the market to slow down. They need the market to, a lender needs to lend money. They've got all this stimulus from the government. They need to lend it out. And it does stimulate the economy, building industry, estate agencies, moving industry, the removals and all these things, and all the home improvements that people do when they move. The housing market is very important to the UK. However, in my opinion, I'm waiting to see what will happen at the end of the stamp duty, and what will happen when unemployment increases, when the furlough scheme and all these stimulus programs end, and then we will have to see how things go. And as I said, not all parts of the country are booming, but if you want to move to the coast, if you think, I fancy living by the seaside, then you might want to think again, because parts of the south of England, this is the Devons, the Cornwall, the Dorsets, and parts of Sussex, prices have gone up in some parts by 48%. The average property down there is something like £500,000 in some of these areas. And you used to be able to buy properties really dirt cheap down there. So if you're thinking about that, then you might want to think again, or maybe move to other parts of the country. I mean, parts of Wales are much, much cheaper. Norfolk, Suffolk are much, much cheaper, apart from a place called Aldborough, which has also gone up by an enormous amount. But, coastal places look great in the summer when the sun's shining, but you go there in the winter, you've got that wind blowing off the sea, they're freezing cold, there's nobody about, it's raining, everything's closed, you can't get a meal after about 7 o'clock because the chef goes home. It's not. I'm a city person myself, so I tend to favour where there's a bit more of a buzz and a bit more life. But a lot of people do like that. There's a show on here called Escape to the Country, where people sell their house in a city and move to places like Devon. But it's not so cheap anymore. You can get places cheaper more inland, but if you want places overlooking the sea, then you're going to have to pay a premium for that. Now, the other thing that's happening, that's already happened this month, at the start of this month, is that the tenant eviction ban has ended, and up to 1 million people in the UK are now in fear of losing their homes because 400,000 tenants have already been served notice, and this is due to unpaid rents. This is according to a report in the Daily Mail, a newspaper here. So the tenant evictions ban has ended, and you might think that's scaremongering, it's all pie in the sky. But this ban means that bailiffs can now come in and evict people from their home. Or evict means throw them out of their home with all their stuff in black sacks. And the government introduced this to support renters during the pandemic. And, as you know, the same thing happened in America and other countries, and it stopped a lot of people from being evicted when they've lost their job or they're in the gig economy, and, the employer said, look, we don't need you at the moment, particularly people, hundreds of thousands of people have been affected in the hospitality industry, so many could genuinely not afford to pay their rent. And landlords have tried to work with those. But there are some that just took advantage of it and said, look, we're not going to pay the rent. And this is according to industry figures, according to the National Landlords Association. Some people have used this as an excuse not to pay the rent and instead just save that money. So if you think you're paying, I don't know, £1,000, £1,500 a month rent, and you can save that over a year, that's £18,000. That's quite a significant sum. And then you think, well, I'll just walk away and say, bye, I'm going now, I'm not paying that rent and you can't catch me. Well, that's what some people have done. And this, a charity, so this is not just the Daily Mail saying this, a charity has said that 400,000 renters have already been served notice and a further 450,000 are in a rent arrears. They're behind with their rent. And I think you'll find a similar figure in the States as well, in America. So, and this is according to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, the charity that originally started the food bank, I believe. So are we going to see a mass of people on the streets? Well, I don't think so in the short term, because the courts here are so bunged up with cases, and these are not just property cases, these are ordinary sort of debt claims, disputes and family claims and all sorts of stuff that have just been put on hold for the last year or more. And so they're really behind with the cases. And the courts the systems they use are, let's say, pretty last century in many ways. It's all paper based, it's very slow, it's cumbersome. If you go there and your case is adjourned, it could be put off for another couple of months, and it just goes on and on and on. So getting possession of a property in practice, from serving, say, a Section 21 notice to getting possession of your home and getting it back in one piece, could take, in normal circumstances, it could take 6 months. And in this case, it could be maybe a year or more. So I don't think we're going to see masses of people on the streets, but some industry people have said that a lot of landlords are just fed up with it, because 60 to 80% of landlords are actually, buy-to-let landlords, are actually only own one property. They're not big companies. They don't own dozens and dozens or hundreds of properties like some landlords I know. So, these landlords are very vulnerable. Many have mortgages. So if the tenant's not paying their rent, they can't afford the mortgage. Maybe the margin between their mortgage and the rent is very slim. So, if that goes down, they're in a bit of trouble. And some landlords have got themselves into trouble. They may be over-geared, over-borrowed. So, they're not big companies. And these landlords, when people walk away from rent arrears, they have little or no chance of ever recovering that money back, because people just move on, they disappear. My advice to the landlords would be to still sue, even at the address that they've last lived at, and go ahead with the claim. and then at least you'll get a county court judgment registered against them. And one day that will come back to bite them. They'll be trying to rent another place, or they'll be trying to get a mobile phone contract or a bank account or a mortgage. And they'll say, oh, you've got this county court judgment there for a couple of £1,000s. Oh, I've forgotten about that. Then they might have to come back and pay it to satisfy that judgment. So I would still go after people through the courts to get your money back. It also stops them repeating the process, becoming a serial tenant from hell. Because if they get a county court judgment, it can be very difficult for them to then get accommodation somewhere else. Because most companies will do, most good letting agents will do a credit search and a credit report. So if you have tenants with rent arrears, do go through the court system. You can go to a place called Money Claim Online. You can Google it, and you can do the whole claim online. You don't have to go to court unless the case is brought before the court. But most people don't even turn up for these things. And you know, as long as you've got the proof that they're in arrears, even if you go to court, you should win. But you know, these county courts can be very up and down. They can be very fickle. So trying to get a house repossession, you know, if a tenant turns up and then says, well, I've asked the landlord to do repairs, here's my emails, the landlord's ignored it, they wouldn't do the repairs, they've refused to fix the leak, and so on. Or they haven't done a statutory report, for instance, they haven't done a gas check, then the judge is likely to throw that claim out, even though, you know, the tenant hasn't paid and refused to pay. The judge can throw that out. So you've got to get all your ducks in a row when you go through this process of trying to get a claim through and get your property back. But it's a tough time for everybody, and most good landlords should be able to work with their tenant through the arrears situation. Touch wood, I haven't had too many problems, but I have had tenants ask for a rent reduction. So we negotiated a rent reduction, because my mind, it's better that you reduce your rent rather than losing the tenant, having to get another tenant in, pay another agent fee, maybe having a void, maybe having to do repairs when they move out and so on. So I took the view that it's better to go for a rent reduction rather than lose the tenant altogether or create that bad feeling. It's not an enormous amount anyway. Sometimes you've got to take a view on these things. That's what you've got to do to keep people happy. And most landlords I know would work with their tenants through the situation. But now most people should be getting back to work. The UK has opened up, largely opened up anyway. Travel is still difficult, and you can't really go on holiday wherever you want. They have this system of a green list countries, amber list countries, and red zone countries, like say the Philippines, or I can't think of another one, but there's a lot of red zone. India would be a red zone country. You shouldn't travel there. And if you do, then when you come back, you've got to go through compulsory quarantine in a hotel at your expense, which could cost you £1,500. I think it's similar for amber countries. And just today, Portugal had been on the green list, so a lot of people have booked up holidays to Portugal. Now I believe the BBC are reporting that today Portugal is likely to be taken off the green list and put on the amber list, which means you shouldn't be going there unless you have essential reasons to go there. And when you come back, you're likely to be forced into some sort of quarantine at great expense. So for families that have been waiting to go on holiday and book these holidays and maybe paid for their trip, it's just be a disaster. Or what about people who are already over there and come back and then find themselves being shoved into a hotel at Gatwick and asked to pay £1,500 or £2,000 for a family to self-isolate. So there you go. That's the situation. But if you're in the UK, most hospitality places are open now. You can go into restaurants, you can go into places. So hopefully the economy should start getting moving. But I don't think we're out of the woods completely. The governments of the UK, the European Union and America have printed trillions and trillions of dollars, pounds and euros to keep the economy artificially buoyant, to stop it from sinking down into the bottom of the sea. And that money has to be paid back somehow. That money has to be dealt with. And I believe it's creating inflationary pressures already, certainly in terms of the assets like property and the stock market, and also in terms of other assets. Oil has shot up to record levels. The price of timber for the building industry have doubled apparently. And even the price of shipping it's the price of shipping has trebled. So people who want to ship goods from one country to another, from China to Europe, the price has trebled in some cases, and that's going to make everything more expensive in the shops, because a lot of the stuff we import comes from China, and we're so dependent on these countries now. We've given away our manufacturing base and said, right, you manufacture because we love cheap stuff, and that's a big mistake, because now we're dependent on those countries. If prices start going up, the cost of living here and inflation will also go up. So inflation figures look low at the moment, but I believe the underlying inflation is much higher, and I think the real rate of inflation is nearer to 4 or 5%, because we know what it's costing for food in the shop, what it's costing for simple electrical goods. Like you go into a shop and buy a small electrical item like a kettle or a toaster. You think, well, that was very cheap. Now it's suddenly 40 or 50 pounds. What's going on? I can give you a couple of more examples of that things have gone up in price. Definitely have gone up in price. I think it's the end of these cheap goods that were coming in from China, and maybe that's a better thing. It's better for the environment, and I would personally prefer to buy things that are manufactured in Britain to support British jobs, because we need that at the moment, and it also is better for the environment. The only thing I know that has gone down, I know Bitcoin went down quite a bit, but I don't see Bitcoin as an investment. It might be somewhere to stash a bit of cash, but I don't see that as an investment asset personally. I'm cautious about things like that, and I believe everybody should be. You shouldn't put it, as the Bank of England said, you shouldn't be putting any money into Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies that you cannot afford to lose. So there you go. That's my opinion on Bitcoin, in case anybody asks. Now, as you know, I was a financial advisor for over 25 years. I'm not in the industry anymore. I don't want to sell their products. I don't want to be involved in selling pension schemes or life assurance and that sort of thing, or bonds. But I've still got that knowledge, and I still help people with money problems, although I cannot specifically say to them, you must buy this pension or that pension or take out this mortgage. But I give a lot of coaching to people in general, in money terms, on a wider scale than a financial advisor could do. A financial advisor is effectively an affiliate marketer. He is marketing products on an affiliate commission basis for the insurance and the financial world, whether it be lenders as well. So I want to look at the wider picture. So if you say to an average financial advisor from a bank, should I buy property? And they say, well, it's very risky to buy property. You'd much be better off putting money into this property bond that we have that charges you a lot of money and doesn't perform very well. Or if you say to them, should I invest in the stock market? I would say, okay, learn about the stock market, learn how to invest, and then cautiously start investing. Why not? That's investing in real assets, just like property is a real asset. But if you talk to a financial advisor about that, they say, oh, no, you should put your money into this fund, and our fund manager, because you're not clever enough to do it yourself, so our fund manager will invest that money for you, and they'll charge you quite a proportion of that money. And even though we don't do very well, we'll still charge you. And you say to them, well, what's your performance like? Well, we've done this and that. I say, well, that's less than the average market movement. Surely the fund manager can do better than that. And they say, well, the market's up and down, but this is pound cost average. And they give you all this rubbish. But the average fund manager does not outperform the market. They underperform the market. The average fund manager performs less well than a tracker fund, which is run by a computer, which just tracks the market. So if you want to invest in a fund like that, under Warren Buffett's advice, you should just go for a tracker fund. But his real advice will be to learn it properly and learn how to invest in the stock market. And the same thing is for property. I would say learn how to invest in property so you can do it yourself, rather than put your money into a property bond, which I found, I couldn't understand why the bonds and the funds in our company were, this is years ago when I worked for a company, so why are they underperforming the property market? The property market was booming, and the bond would say do 3 or 4%. I thought, well, that doesn't make sense, But this is because they're overblown with staff and costs, and they can't move as fast as an investor can. If you want to invest in property, learn about property, learn about the area that you live in, learn about where the good areas and bad areas are, and you can do it yourself. You can get leverage to buy property, you can borrow money to buy property, which you cannot get leverage to invest in an insurance company bond. They won't do it because they say it's too risky, but they will lend you money to buy property. I'm not particularly pushing property at the moment, but I'm just giving you an example of how I coach people to look at the wider aspect, to look at the whole scene, to look at it holistically rather than just narrowly looking at this is my portfolio of products I can sell you or advise you to go into. So you can have a pension plan, you can have a savings plan, you can have this endowment policy. That's all I can tell you to do. But what I'm saying to you is I can give a holistic coaching to people who might be in business. How can they improve their business? How can they improve their marketing? How can they improve their advertising on Facebook? This is what I do now. So what I'm doing at the moment, so if you find these broadcasts useful, then please follow me on my social media. Follow me here on Facebook. Follow me on Charles Kelly Marketing or Money Tips Daily pages. And also share this with your friends so that they can get some free advice as well, free tips, free money tips, free views on where the market is going. And I'm offering now this month 3 free coaching strategy calls. I can only take on so many of these every month, so I'm pretty busy at the moment anyway. But I'm offering 3 free coaching strategy calls where we look at your situation. We outline a strategy for you as to where you're going with your money journey in order that you can master money, if you like. That's the goal, is to become a money master. And I'm offering this. So if you're interested in that, message me on Facebook if you're watching this on Facebook, or email charles@charleskelly.net. I'll put a link up there in the bottom of the description here. So thanks very much for listening today. Hope you're all having a great day wherever you are in the world. As I said, it's a beautiful day in London, so I'm going to get out and have a little walk around and go and get a coffee. So thanks very much for listening, and bye for now. This is Charles Kelly bringing you money tips to help you save, earn, invest, accumulate and enjoy more money. Thanks a lot.